Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin'. Today we're talking about the top baits for bass fishing in the month of August. August is a fun month to be out bass fishing. There is all sorts of things going on. We've still got shallow fish that will chase topwater. We've got fish that had stopped chasing bait that towards the end of the month will begin doing it again. We've got fish around grass. We've got fish around hard structure. We've got deep fish. We've got shallow fish. You name it. There's a lot going on in August. That said, there are some key baits and some key ways that we consistently catch fish throughout this month. So what I've done today is just grab some of my most consistent baits, the things that I rely on headed into August to catch fish. A couple of slow moving baits and then some reaction baits. Let's start with the slow moving baits. Okay, the first one is actually going to be a straight-tailed worm, specifically drop shotting that worm. You know, a northern guy and a guy in a southern fishery, a little bit different situation, especially come August. But the drop shot remains true throughout. One thing that changed last year, Owner came out with the Cover Shot HD, the heavy duty hook. And that changed a lot of things because we are able to effectively fish the drop shot in very heavy cover now. We were doing it anyway before, but we would bend out some hooks. Now that they've got that Cover Shot HD, it is deadly. So a 6-inch straight-tailed worm, rigged weedless on a drop shot. This is a 1/0 Cover Shot HD on a heavier drop shot weight. I can fish this anywhere. I mean, I can fish that up north where there's no grass whatsoever on a clear fishery. I can turn around and I can throw this on bridge pilings in a lake where that's the only hard cover. And I can take this to the south and I can flip it into the heart of grass clumps on a power shot setup like this, on a bait caster, you know, heavier 12-pound line, and I can fish it effectively in grass. But bait number one is that straight-tailed worm, a 6-inch straight tail on a drop shot. Now, I will link all of these baits as well as the hooks, the rigging components, all of that down in the video description below the video for you as well. If you're not familiar with our videos, it's a full description with all the baits and links to Tackle Warehouse where you can look at all the detailed information, up close photos, that sort of thing. Now, depending on the device that you're on, you may need to just scroll down. You know, if you're on our actual website, you can just scroll down. The whole description is there. If you are on YouTube, you probably need to click more, then scroll down. You might even need to click more again. You might click the 3 little dots if you're on a cell phone, but there is a description down there with all of this stuff linked for you. The second one is a Texas rig. The Texas rig is about as universal as a rig is going to get, okay? But come August, I do some very specific things. I do something that makes my Texas rig different from most people, okay? By August, bass have been beat on, especially the bass that are up on visual cover. The first thing I think of is docks. You know, those hot August days, those bass are sucked up in those shadows just like they have been for the last couple of months. The difference between now and say June is they've seen 5,000 baits. They're getting more finicky. They're getting harder to fool. Something that I do is I go to these more finesse creatures. So like this is the baby destroyer. It's the small one, longer tails, very natural movement. And because it has long tails, those tails will move with almost no motion, okay? Then I use a lighter weight hook. This one's an Owner all-purpose hook. That's not even an expensive hook. That's a budget-friendly hook that works really well. It's lighter wire, but it's not too light, and that's part of it. And then I use an unpegged Texas weight, okay? The heaviest you're going to see me use for this technique is a 3/8, and a lot of the time I use a 3/16. This is a 3/8. That's as big as I'm going to go. That's if the wind is blowing and I need to be able to feel. If it's slick calm, 3/16 is all you need with that smaller creature bait and that lighter wire hook. And then I'll fish hard structure. Docks, dock pilings, laid down trees, anywhere along the bank that those fish can get up into that cover. Even scattered grass like I've got here. I've got some leafy grass laid down along the bank. I'll fish it there where those fish are going to be in those shadows up shallow. But by going to that unpegged weight, and it's a lighter weight, and then by going to a lighter wire hook, my bait has a much slower fall. So when I throw it up there, say that dock is 6 feet deep, that weight will shoot down to the bottom, and then this bait will slowly follow with these tails back there just twirling and kicking on the way down. It's just a much finessier presentation. When I pop it up, again, that weight pops right up, but then that weight falls away from the bait and it lets that bait come down a little more naturally. It's actually very similar to free rigging in terms of the function of the bait. We're slowing the fall of the creature bait, and that works very well for me throughout August. Again, it works anytime, but where it becomes important to me to do is after these shallow fish have been beat on for a couple of months and I want to stand out from the crowd. I don't want to look like every shaky head that's come through that dock. I want to be different. Do it with that unpegged weight. Now, let's transition. Let's talk deep for a second. The third bait is going to be a deep crank. Okay, there are a lot of fish that are pulled out. They're on main lake structures, rock piles, rocky corners, island tops, you know, edges of bluff walls if there's current. Fish like to pull out to some of those places, and a crankbait is an effective way to catch them. But again, the farther we get into the summer, the more baits have run by those fish, and that's where a bait that's silent or a bait that's very natural, it's not an overwhelming movement, not super wide, not super aggressive, not super loud, is going to be effective. So you want either silent or muted sound. Not super loud, natural swim. This is the Rapala, the DT16. That one is really effective this time of year. It will continue to catch fish after other crankbaits stop catching them. It's a really effective bait. I also start going back to the more natural colors. And again, I'll link some of my favorites in the description, but you'll see me throwing a lot of that powder blue, chartreuse, bright, bold colors in June and July. But as we start getting into the latter part of summer, you see me go back to those natural tones. I'm just trying to drum it down a little bit and get those fish to bite that are a little more wary. Next one, heading back up a little bit shallower, is going to be an underspin. There are a lot of fish that are going to be targeting bait fish right now. Be that fish that are in grass and they want to ambush out and eat bait fish. In the mornings, they'll be up moving around, chasing. Midday, they'll get into the shadows, but they'll ambush out. Sometimes you fish over the tops of grass. Sometimes we'll fish around the edges of docks. Sometimes you'll fish along rocky points. There's a lot of places to do it. But one thing that remains the same is that if I'm throwing a swim bait, I want it to be an underspin. I want it to have a blade. Now I'm holding two very different baits here. There's a reason for that. That's because I'm trying to minimize this. I said it's the top 5 baits for August. I think it's actually like the top 6 or 7. I never quite hit 5, but I try. I've narrowed it down. However, I'm speaking to everybody. You might be in Florida or Texas, or you might be in Michigan or Vermont, and it's not going to be the same underspin, okay? So for the guy who's got a ton of grass in his lake, the Flashy Swimmer. The Flashy Swimmer is an amazing hook. This is a 5/0 Flashy Swimmer with a 4.8 Kitech, and if you look closely, that one has been chewed to pieces in the last few days. But this is an effective bait because it's weedless. You can throw it right through the grass. You could burn it like it's a buzz bait on top, You can slow roll it down in 10 feet of water. You can bump it through the grass, but it's really good in places where there's junk in the water. Whereas this guy, this was designed by Tim and I. This is our Tactical Bassin Mini underspin done by Dirty Jigs. It's got a 1/0 heavy duty hook. Okay, this bait is very effective in the south, but not in the grass beds around the edges, but it shines. You know, big smallmouth, spotted bass, Highland Reservoir largemouth, clearer water. We built this bait with a long dropper arm, so it's a heavy duty hook, but it's small. So you can throw this on 5 and 6 pound line, but you can also upsize to 8 or 10 or 12 and you still won't bend out that hook. And then the dropper arm is long enough to clear all our favorite soft baits for this time of year. A 3 or a 3.5 inch Largo, a 3.3 or a 3.8 Kitech, or a 2.8 Kitech, the Swammer, the 3.5 inch or the 4 inch Swammer. You know, a lot of those baits that we really like to throw. This is the 3 inch Largo paired up. This is a deadly bait this time of year. When bass are chasing shad, there is no better bait than a Largo to imitate the movement of a shad that's running. So this pairing, that is the 1/4 ounce head with a 3 inch Largo. That's an amazing little underspin. So we've got the drop shot, the unweighted or the unpegged Texas rig. We've got a deep crank. We've got an underspin. We've got 2 more. Soft jerkbait. Now the soft jerkbait is a very universal bait. I like to fish these at or near the surface, very aggressively, very quickly, early in the day. And then again, when fish draw into cover, they get into the shadows. I like to fish it up to those shadows and then stall it out and let it sink. But a soft jerkbait like a Zoom Super Fluke is just a deadly bait this time of year. Again, you can work it quick. You can work it as a topwater, jumping and darting out of the water, or you can slow it down and just pop, pop, stall it, and it'll just sort of glide and drift. Now, there's another one, X-Zone makes one that I really prefer if I want to slow down, and I'll link that one in the description too, because the Super Fluke, that's my faster bait. That X-Zone is the one that I like to just let drift and drop into deeper water. So I'll work it quick up to a shadow and then stall it, let it float down in there. It'll just sort of glide in and then pop it a couple times, let it glide again. It's a 1-2 punch. They're both soft jerk baits, but one is high in the column and one's a little lower. And then last, category number 6 is a topwater. You just can't hardly beat a topwater this time of year. We all love topwater fishing. It's been going for a few months. It's going to go for a few more, but the styles of topwater will change. If you're on a southern fishery and there's a lot of grass, I throw the frog. But one thing I do, and this is the deal, this is the Jackal Kiara. It's a downsized frog. It's very small, very natural profile, very natural colors. We're able to throw it on a little lighter frog rod. I'll throw it on 50-pound braid instead of 65, and I'm just able to get more bites on it. Works really well when they're chasing smaller bait fish. Now, that's not to say there's not 50 other great frogs, but again, just like I'm getting more specific with my Texas rig, trying to stand out from the pack, that little Jackal Kiara stands out from the pack and will get me bit at times where they won't eat other frogs. Now, if you're not in a grass fishery, you don't need the weedless aspect of a frog, I'm throwing a big walking bait. Okay, I want to cover a lot of water. I want to pull those fish to me. This is the 13 Fishing Power Slide. I started playing with this one a lot last summer. I got on a bite where I was paralleling bluff walls in August last year, just trashing them on this bait. See how it has kind of these two, I'll call them fangs for lack of a better word, sticking out here on the corners of the mouth. It throws, if you work it hard, it throws a lot of water with those two little fangs. But if you slow down and walk it, it's got a really good walk, really subtle, really good sound. But I have the option to speed it up and just start slinging water. So it's a bait that can do several different things really effectively. And I like that overall size. It is a full profile. This is not a small walking bait. It's a full profile. I can bomb it and I can cover a lot of water effectively. August is a great time to be on the water. There's a lot of different ways to catch them, but these are some very specific baits that I rely on. Again, in that description, I'll give you my favorite colors too. Tim and I spend a ton of time on the water, dialing in the little nuances, right? Dropping down to a 3/16 ounce in August so that I get the slower fall, so that I get more bites. We work really hard on those little things that will help you be more effective with the time that you have on the water. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.